Headliner Nation, what is going on? Welcome back. Kyle with the Fantasy Headliners, and we've got tight ends, the football kind, on deck today. Week 2 start and sit video. We've got quite a few things to go over in this one, so make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and if you're new here to the channel, subscribe and stick around. Now, in case you've missed it in the other start and sit videos, we're not dropping an accuracy percentage anymore because we now have our own standalone video that we're doing after the week is done that you'll be able to catch on Mondays. It's going to go more in depth. So instead of just giving you a percentage, we're going to go in depth on hits and misses. So make sure that you catch that next Monday to see what we got right and what we got wrong in our start and sit videos. But we got to move forward, baby. Let's talk about some tight ends. Thursday night football. Gerald Everett, Travis Kelce going to be going at it for the Chargers and the Chiefs. I mean, Kelce's going to ball out as usual, right? We're not sitting Travis Kelce. He is a very, very easy start for us this week going up against the LA Chargers. And I'm definitely looking to Gerald Everett now. Now that we know that, okay, it's not official, but basically official, no Keenan Allen this week, I think it could definitely be a really big matchup this week for Gerald Everett. I'm liking his potential, especially to, rack up maybe a little bit more in terms of the volume than what we have seen as of recent. Miami at Baltimore, we've got one banger of a start with Mark Andrews, and then we got one guy that has fallen off hard. Mike Gesicki is not utilized in this offense. He may have a decent game here or there, but he's not being utilized in the passing game like he used to be under a different regime. Mike Gesicki for me is an absolute drop and a move on from at the tight end position. For Mark Andrews, saw the targets last week, and even though he wasn't his usual productive self, he actually was, still pretty decent based on tight end numbers that we saw coming out of last week. So, Isaiah Likely still continues to be out there. I don't really think he's taking anything from Mark Andrews. He did see a few targets last week, didn't turn him into anything. But for me, Isaiah Likely really is kind of out there as just a stretcher, to kind of get multiple weapons out on the field. I don't think he's going to take a whole lot from Mark Andrews. As the season goes on, maybe we see a little bit here and there, but honestly, nothing that I'm starting right now. The Jets and the Browns, and even though I didn't have them listed as a start last week, I did make the call that I would not be surprised if Tyler Conklin were to find the end zone, and surprise, baby, look what happened. Boom. Conklin ends up finding a touchdown in the end zone. He did have 7 targets to go with it as well. Tyler Conklin is going to be a start for me this week going up against the Browns, and I don't want to sit Njoku this week because I think the opportunity is still going to be there. But for this week, I am going to back off against the New York Jets. I just want to step back. I want to step back from David Njoku. I think they're still going to get him going, but I've got to see it and trust it before I believe it. Washington at the Detroit Lions, and the wide receivers were such a big part of the Washington passing game last week that I expect a lot of the same this week. And because of that, you're just not going to see really the same production that we've seen from Logan Thomas in the past. I mean, they've got more weapons this year than they've had in previous years when Logan Thomas has been a guy that at the wide receiver position was very underrated and we could utilize weekly. Now, he's still shaking off some of that rust from being injured. He did see a decent amount of targets, but didn't turn him into anything. So we'll see what happens with him, especially with having so many playmakers on the offense. Now, TJ Hawkinson did see 7 targets last week, and they definitely want to get him included. Like this isn't going to be part of the game plan where he kind of disappeared last year. As long as he stays healthy, I think Jared Goff is going to be looking his way. We might need to be patient with it, but I think this is a good opportunity for us to throw him in there, especially if you drafted him. You really probably aren't going to have anyone else to start. And there might not be anybody else on the waiver wire to really toss out there right now. For last week, Washington only allowed 4 receptions to Evan Ingram. But, I don't know if he's really supposed to be a big part of the game plan either. So TJ Hawkinson, high risk start, but I'm still going to list him as a start this week. Indianapolis and Jacksonville, there's not really a whole lot to say here. Mo Cox, no problem. Evan Ingram, I don't think either of these guys are ready for fantasy rosters as of yet. Now, with as much as Indy had to throw it last week, I would have hoped that Mo Alley Cox would have gotten into the game plan a little bit more, but it just didn't happen. Now, Indianapolis did give up 2 touchdowns last week to OJ Howard, which is kind of the shock of the week. Could the same thing happen to Evan Ingram? Of course it could. But even if it did, maybe it's, 1, 2, 3 catches. You give the one touchdown. Maybe he's only got a few yards. Is he still going to be worth it? Tampa Bay at Nolans, baby. And with the wide receivers in such a big potential game for Leonard Fournette this week, I am out on Cameron Brate, out on Kyle Rudolph, not worried about either of these guys. If they show up at some point again this season, we'll talk about it more. But for the time being, I just don't think Tom Brady is looking either way right now. And then Taysom Hill is the only tight end that I'm starting for New Orleans. Now, a lot of people asked, why wasn't he included in the waiver wire video? Because so many different platforms have him at so many different positions. Some have him as a tight end. Some have him as a quarterback. Some have him as a quarterback tight end. The last thing I wanted to do was throw something out there and confuse people. So I figured, hey, I'll wait till the tight end show to talk about it. That was a mistake because a lot of people had questions and didn't understand. But anyway, with Taysom Hill, the reason he's being brought up here in the tight end video is because he would be a start at tight end. If you can put him at tight end, I'm okay with that. There was a couple of questions about putting him at quarterback. No. If you're trying to start him at quarterback, that's not good enough. Tight end, though, absolutely. Pick him up and go for it. Carolina at the New York Giants, and Ian Thomas did have a 50-yard reception, but then other than that, he caught one pass for 3 yards. So yeah, big play, busted play, whatever it may be, still not enough for me. And then Daniel Bellinger, no tight end targets to any of them last week. With Bellinger being hurt, no tight end on the New York Giants roster, got a target last week. That team is a mess. I'm staying away from all of them. The Patriots at the Steelers this week. New England spread the ball around a lot. 8 players got 2 or more targets last week from Mac Jones. So for me, Jonnu Smith, he's very, very close. Based on the potential matchup and based on just the volume he saw last week, he's right there, but not good enough, especially with how much they're spreading the ball around right now. There isn't enough upside for me to jump on until we see one of these guys maybe start to make some leeway a little bit, or we start to see Mac Jones trust them a little bit more, other than tight ends or other than the other wide receivers. Or we just see them, not focus on the wide receiver so much. And then Pat Freiermuth. Oh, man, Pat Freiermuth brings my prize pick prop of the week. Muth right now over on Prize Picks. The over-under for his yards is set at 37.5 this week. Boom, I'm taking the over. Let's go for it. 10 targets last week, and Najee Harris is banged up. You know what that is? That's a recipe for a darn good fantasy day. Atlanta at the LA Rams. And normally I would say, hey, Jalen Ramsey, yes, love the matchup. Now, he did get destroyed last week. And I feel like some of you are going to bring that up in the comments if I talk, if I'm positive about Ramsey, you're going to be like, oh, he got destroyed. But he got destroyed by Cooper Kupp. That's a lot different than matching up against Kyle Pitts. That's a big, big difference, all right? So for me, I think Ramsey's much better matchup-wise one-on-one with Kyle Pitts, and he's going to be more successful at that. Pitts had 7 targets last week. Not great targets. I've got very, very low confidence in this start. I'm still going to list him as a start because he's the main weapon there. I'm not excited for it. I'm definitely not waiting on any type of a huge performance. For Tyler Higbee, Atlanta allowed the 3rd most fantasy points last week to tight end, but it was Taysom Hill, so it wasn't actually a tight end. All right? He's designated as a tight end. That's why the fantasy points show up there. But really, honestly, the big plays that he wasn't really a tight end anyway. But Tyler Higbee did have the most targets out of anybody last week at the tight end position with 11. Now, will he keep it up? Probably not, but I still think that Stafford is going to utilize him as a number 3 at the very least until we see Van Jefferson get back. And who knows, if him and A-Rob are not on the same page, maybe he's the number 2 this week. Seattle at San Francisco, and Seattle running 3 tight ends out there right now does not bode well for any of their value. Chicago didn't allow any points to tight ends last week, but there was no George Kittle and the weather was awful. So that doesn't really matter. But am I really trying to pick between 3 tight ends when you also have DK Metcalf and you also have Tyler Lockett? I'm not interested in it. Now, their production's going to seem very high because they scored a touchdown, and we say this on the channel all the time. The tight end position, you could trip and fall into the end zone every once in a while, and you could still end up as a tight end 1. Like, that's how easy it is to be a tight end 1 these days. So for Disley and Parkinson, you might be looking at them and saying, hey, they scored last week. Should be keeping an eye on them. No, because Disley and Parkinson are all getting targets and they're all getting snaps right now. There's no rhyme or reason to go with any of them. George Kittle's going to be listed here. He's got an injury factor of 1 right now. I don't know about George Kittle. We're just going to have to continue to monitor it. And if something comes out before the rankings video, we'll update it then. If not, we'll update it on the live shows this week. Cincinnati and Dallas is going to have 2 starts in this game. 5 catches on 8 targets last week for Hayden Hurst, and now possibly no T. Higgins this week. Oh, we're going to go back to him on this matchup. It might be a little bit more difficult, and his score of 17 isn't super high to be a start, but there's going to be an opportunity for him, and he showed some of that opportunity last week. We're going to go back to him this week. And Dalton Schultz, a lot of people are probably going to be like, but Dak got hurt. Why are we still looking at Schultz? Well, Schultz is going to continue to be that safety blanket. Like, he's the guy that is going to offer the best opportunity for the high percentage plays, especially if nobody's really getting open down the field. I'm still going to start Schultz. He's coming off 9 targets last week, and I think he's going to be that safety blanket that's going to be utilized in the offense. Houston and Denver, and if you haven't picked O.J. Howard up off of your waiver wire yet, I'm going to need you to do that very, very soon. Only 2 targets last week, but he scored 2 touchdowns. But keep in mind, he literally just landed in Houston a week ago. Like, the guy showed up in Houston and went out and scored 2 touchdowns after being cut by Buffalo right before the season started. Yes, please. Give me that. Let me have that on my team to see how this grows. I like what could happen. He should be off your waivers. He should be in your lineup this week. If you don't have one of the top options available, but O.J. Howard having that connection with Davis Mills this early, you got to follow that. And Albert, are you okay? It's going to be tough to get targets when Javonte Williams, Judy, and Sutton are all getting so much. But is Javonte Williams going to really get 11 targets per week? I highly doubt that. 5 catches on 6 targets last week for Albert. Are you okay? Expect some big plays to come soon. Arizona at Las Vegas is going to bring my Manscaped must-watch matchup of the week. Make sure you head over to manscaped.com. Use code word headliners at checkout. It's going to take 20% off your entire purchase and give you free shipping. Manscaped.com. Now, Ertz and Waller, the reason this is my must-watch is because this matchup could be huge. Las Vegas last week allowed 54 yards on 3 catches and a touchdown to Gerald Everett. Arizona last week allowed 121 yards on 8 catches and 1 touchdown to Travis Kelce. Both of these defenses got off to a bad start last week. Both of them did against tight ends. Ertz was banged up, so there wasn't a ton of volume for him, but I'm thinking he bounces back. He's a little bit healthier this week. They get him back out there, get him feeling real good. He's going to continue to pick up volume in the game as long as he gets more and more healthy. And for Darren Waller, I mean, not a great week last week, obviously. Devontae Adams is going to be the number 1, but Waller is going to be, dependable number 2 potentially, especially if this stays as a pass-heavy offense. Chicago at Green Bay, and for the 2nd straight week, Chicago might be in the middle of some bad weather. Now, I have seen a little bit that we might have some weather headed into Green Bay. We'll keep an eye on it and see what happens with it. And I actually really want to start Cole Kmet this week. The score says not to. He's got a score of 10. But honestly, unless the weather sucks, because if it does, he's obviously a sit. But if you don't really have anybody else, I'm going to bypass the sit score here, and I'm going to give him another chance this week, knowing that the bad weather in Chicago last week is really what hurt them more than anything. Cole Kmet should start to see his targets tick up here pretty soon. And Robert Tonyan, waiting to see if Allen Lazard returns right now. If he doesn't, then Big Bobby Tonyan could take a little bit of a step forward. Make sure you check out the rankings video because he could be one of the biggest movers once we know. Tennessee and Buffalo are going to get together on Sunday Night Football. And if there was ever a week for Austin Hooper to show up, it would have been last week when Robert Woods and Treylon Burks were both trying to shake off rust from being banged up in training camp or from last season like Woods was. He didn't, though. He didn't show up. It's a good matchup for him for the tight end position, but he didn't show up. I'm not really interested in this week. Not really interested. I think we can find some better options. Like I mentioned a second ago with Kmet, I'd rather start Kmet over Hooper this week. For Dawson Knox, he was a bust for me in the draft guide this season. After being an avid Dawson Knox supporter and liking him going into last year, I have reversed course and I'm going the other way right now on Dawson Knox. And you could see it because you've got Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder taking such a dedicated target share from the slot in those intermediate routes. That's where Dawson Knox should be cleaning up. He can't because of those two. So now his sole upside and his sole fantasy production is related around touchdowns. And I don't know, with all the weapons they have there, if there's enough to go around consistently. Minnesota and Philadelphia, Monday Night Football. I still think Irv Smith gets going soon. Now, I'm going to wait, though. Okay? I'm going to sit. I'm going to wait. I'm going to let him shake that rust off. And I'm going to miss his first big game of the season. But that's okay because there's going to be plenty to come after that. And I'll go back to Irv Smith and put him in my lineup when that happens. For Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown is the guy, but Dallas Goedert is second. 3 catches for 60 yards last week, and he literally fell down at the goal line. So he was that close to also scoring a touchdown. He might not get a ton of volume on a weekly basis, but really all he needs is like 6 to 8 targets to make him a fantasy viable tight end every single week. I'm going to go back to him this week as a start. But, ladies and gentlemen, there you go, the end of the video. Hit the like button for me. If you're new here, you've got to subscribe. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Let me know down in the comments if you are new, because I want to welcome you with open arms and give you a big virtual chest bump hug type of thing like that. You know, that awkward stuff that men have to do when they meet for the first time. Anyway, we'll do that virtually. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave me a comment down below. Appreciate you all tuning into this video. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.